All right.
Put up the first slide, Dani. I mean, Lisa, sorry.
Oh, did you want? That's why I sent it to you. Crazy.
Oh, I can't manage a slide and talking. I'm just
one quick second.
Sorry. Dani's already joined us, and most of you are here. We're going to get started while Lisa puts up the slideshow. Welcome and thanks for attending this Rural Initiative event, Getting Rural Folks Ready to Vote. Our officers and their contact information will be shown on a slide once Lisa gets it up. And we will have them briefly say hi if they're here. And Jennifer, one of our co-vice chairs, is in Greece. Lisa, do you have the slides yet? There we go. All right. So this is the title of our presentation this morning, and I'm trying to. All right, I can't see the entire screen, so I'll introduce myself. I am Mary Dodd. I'm the chair of the Rural Initiative, and I'm the chair of the Montezuma County Democrats, the second vice chair of the CD3 Central Committee, and I was co-chair with Lisa of the rural plank of the platform committee. And Lisa, introduce yourself.
Okay, thanks. Sorry about that. I was like, I don't know how to unmute myself now. I'm Lisa Chalet. I am the vice chair of legislative affairs for the Rural Initiative. In addition to being the chair of Congressional District 4, where Lauren Boebert carpet-bagged her way onto the ballot.
And I can't see who else is here. Is Pam, you're here. Introduce yourself, Pam.
Yes, I'm Pam Bradley, chair of Summit County Democrats, and also co-vice chair of the Rural Initiative.
And I can't here because I just let him
in. John is here. Is that what you said?
Yes.
Okay. Is Kathy here?
I don't think I saw Kathy.
I don't think so. John, if you have joined, and unmute yourself and just introduce yourself and your roles. Maybe still.
Yeah, hi, I am John Chrysaludis, Garfield County. I've been involved with the party for the last 8 years of various roles, and now vice chair of the Senate District 5, chair of the Judicial District 9, and treasurer for the Rural Initiative. Thank you.
Okay, and thanks to Lisa Chalet, who's also chair of the CD4 Central Committee for the use of their Zoom. Among other things, the Rural Initiative works to develop messaging that will be relevant to rural communities and rural areas of the state. We have 62 counties that are classified as rural, and we or have large rural areas out of 64 counties. That's significant. Our officers participated in the development of the rural plank of the Colorado platform, the first time in CDP's history that we had a rural plank, and we will email all registrants a copy of the rural plank later. Here's a brief look at our agenda for this morning. And there we go. And a quick look at housekeeping guidelines. So if you have technical problems, you're going to type them in the chat and we'll try and help. Chat will just be to the host and co-host. And during the question and answer section, type your questions in the chat so the officers will read them aloud. During the practice scenarios section, we will unmute people who are going to participate in that as well. So now we're excited, very excited to have Dani here to share her experiences on and her expertise on rural organizing and messaging. Her background in communication, community development, and political engagement uniquely qualify her for this work. Among other things, she was a key field organizer for the Stacey Abrams campaign. She is an Army vet, and from a personal perspective, she is one of the most inspiring people that I've had the good opportunity, and Lisa has had the good opportunity to meet and be interviewed by. So we consider this just such a great honor, Dani. Thank you for agreeing to share your expertise with us. And now, Dani Cook.
Well, geez, Pete, y'all always like kind of make me blush. But anyway, I appreciate it. I'm really excited to be here. I think the same thing about Lisa and Mary. Haven't met them for a while and gotten a chance to interview. They are part of the group that comes to, I do a networking call for ruralvote.org, and Lisa comes a lot, and she knows how to do things. So I don't know what you're used to. I'm very lax. I'm very we are all in this thing together. If you could see me, I'm in yoga pants and barefooted because that's the way I live life. So I love to feel people's energy. And as we go through this process and I share things with you, I encourage you to just be open and share with me. I might pause along the way and ask questions and things like that. So just, that's kind of how we're going to roll if you're good with that. So let me share my screen and we will go from there. Everybody good? You all can see this? Yes, perfect. And you're gonna think I'm weird because I haven't, I'm showing it to you like this. It is because I like to see your faces and I don't want full screen stuff all blown up. So as long as you can read this and everybody's good visually, I'm just gonna leave it like this if that's okay. Perfect. I should hit present though, shouldn't I? Maybe. No, I'm not. I'm just gonna scroll. All right, so check this out. So our intentions for this space and this time together. So the purpose is to provide participants with strategies for engaging, informing, and persuading the people of rural Colorado to vote and to vote Democratic by asking these 4 questions, right? So who am I speaking with? Notice I did not say, who am I talking to? You will notice this is a big thing with me. I pay attention to words. It is not who am I talking to, but who am I speaking with? With indicates it is something we are doing together. It's not something that I'm doing to you. So remember that the person that you're talking to is in this conversation with you. It's not you talking to them. What 4 things are required for every conversation and exchange? What is important to the person that you're talking to, and how does your candidate provide it? And then number 4, how do we communicate in a way that gives people permission to do something different that may go against their previous action, their political party, and possibly sometimes their faith, right? So what are the outcomes? My hope is that when you leave here, you will know who and where to expend your energy with before the upcoming election, especially within your circle and the doors that you knock. You'll know what you must bring to and leave out of every conversation, because believe it or not, there are some things that don't bring them to the table. Number 3, be able to address what I call baby negatives before they become real objections, and tackle tough topics while avoiding trigger words and gain commitment, not compliance. That's a thing of mine. And then the last one is have a basic understanding of this thing called a communications model. I use it a lot. And what I will tell you is once you know how to identify how people process information and how they ultimately communicate, it really impacts your ability to flex into their windows and be heard. Okay. So who am I? How did I get here? You heard a little bit about that. This would be me and Stacey Abrams dancing, believe it or not. One of the few times you will see her like this. This was at homecoming down in Atlanta. And yeah, I adore everything about her and her platforms, just her policy, her brilliance. She is the thing. I kind of got into the politics side of thing, not because I love politics, because ew, but because I realized that when I say it like that, I'm talking about the just the political nature of it all, the things that we think politics are about, right? Because politics is really about people. And so the way that I got here is because my grandbaby, this is my 2nd grandbaby, 1st grand girl. This is Bella, and she was born weighing 1 pound 3 ounces in a neonatal intensive care unit. This was her like last year. This is her with me in a room of 500 people speaking to the Tennessee Department of Health because they created a medical monopoly using our state legislature that controls 97% of all inpatient care. That ended up leading to me leading a protest against them. This would be us in the winter. We were outside of one of their hospitals for 257 days straight. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We collected almost 30,000 local signatures and took them to Congress and to the FTC. I just spoke in front of the FTC again 2 days ago with Chair Khan. And yeah, so that's the thing. And believe it or not, after 6 years of a lot of hard work, we just found out this week that the Department of Health is for the first time ever trying to modify the terms of conditions and maybe hold this health system to account. So there you go. It might have taken a while, but maybe we're getting there. So this is my rule. I believe in this more than anything in life. I will die on this hill. People do not care how much you know until they know how much you care. Why is that important? Because if not, you are knocking on doors, you are wasting your time. It will not matter because they won't believe you. And here's what we know about rural people. We aren't very trusting. So please be able to communicate that you are authentic and that people actually believe that you care about them and you're not just knocking on a door because it's election time, right? So I want to talk a little bit about the beautiful state of Colorado, which, by the way, my brother lives there. He lives in Colorado Springs. And I did this project last year for ruralorganizing.org, and it was the top 100 rural communities for power building across the country. These were the counties that made the list for rural Colorado. And this was just some of the numbers. And I wanted to just give you the lowdown here. You could expand just by focusing on these rural counties. You could expand the lead for the presidential election by an additional 5.5 points, which would be a nice improvement, right? And we're only talking about those counties. House District 3, you could flip that sucker just about, because look, there was 546 votes in this county. That was it. And just these rural counties in Colorado, there were 27,859 registered voters that did not vote. So a lot of times when we think about, getting out the vote and voter registration, all of those different things, sometimes it's not about finding new people to vote. Sometimes it's about finding out why the people who are already registered are no longer pretending. When I think about the hurdles to getting people to vote, I think about a couple of things. A, they got to be registered, right? B, they've got to want to participate. And then C, they got to show up to vote. So when I think about that, if, hey, they're already registered, that means at some point in time they wanted to participate. So now my job is to find out why are they no longer participating and get them over that whole hurdle to get them back in the game, okay? Now, just because a county is not on here does not mean they're not worth organizing. Every county, every door is worth organizing. The purpose of this particular project was to see where we could build power, which means by flipping seats, by doing whatever. And I did a presentation, Lisa has access to it, on that whole process of how I found these counties and identified them and how we work on them. But I want to talk about organizing. And when I talk about organizing, I want to talk about communication. So this is one of my favorite quotes by Bernard Weber. It says, between what I think, what I want to say, what I believe that I say, what I actually say, what you want to hear, what you believe to hear, what you really hear, and what you understand, what you think you understand, what you understand, there are 10 possibilities that we might have some problem communicating, but let's try anyway. Because there's all types of places in there where things break down. How many times have you been in a conversation with someone and you say something and they think you said something different? And sometimes you're even using the same words, right? So I think about right now, everybody says, oh, we're doing this for democracy, or we're doing this for dictatorship. Or if I hear the word Marxism one more time and nobody really knows what it means, oh, dear Lord, right? These are the challenges that we have when we are communicating with people, because they are using words a lot of times that they don't really know the meaning. And that's not saying that anybody is dumb at all. Here's what I know. I'm from Northeast Tennessee in the country, right? I've got people back home that will swear up and down, we need to get rid of that there Obamacare. But I'm so glad I have the Affordable Care Act, because honey, that's how I got my surgery. It's the same thing. They have no clue. All they know is somebody told them Obamacare was bad, and they're glad they have the Affordable Care Act. So it's about having conversations and making sure that we are talking about the same things, okay? So 4 things you got to bring to every conversation: respect, compassion, authenticity, and vulnerability. Now, is anybody surprised that this is what I'm talking about right now? Because I bet you we're talking about policy and, arguments and debate tactics and da-da-da-da. Nope. Let me tell you what, without these 4 things, you might as well stay home. If people don't believe that you respect them, In other words, if you are seen saying on your social media, because y'all know who small towns are, people pay attention and they talk. If you put on your social media, people around here vote against their own best interest, guess what? They know that's what you think of them. And if you're voting against your own best interest, you must be dumb to do that. And why does anyone want to talk to you if they think that you think that they're dumb? They don't, right? So we must indicate to the people that we're speaking with that we respect them and where they are. Now, I'm clear to set a boundary and say, listen, I can respect you. I can respect your right to have an opinion. It doesn't mean I have to respect the opinion that you have, right? All of those things are not equal, but I absolutely respect you as a human being. And I want for you what you want for your children and everyone else, right? And I think that this is something that we need to be talking about, especially within our neighborhoods and our circles of influence. Okay. So sometimes people find it hard to talk to the people in their lives who they have close relationships with when they know we have differences of opinion. How many of you all avoid having conversations with people that you've known a long time, that maybe you love, maybe you go to church with them, but you think differently when it comes to your political candidates? And so because of that, nobody talks about it, right? I think this is a great place to talk about it. Of course, I love to do the hard things for some reason. And so, but this is the way that I approach that conversation. And sometimes it depends on who I'm talking to. But when I'm having these conversations, when somebody tells me, well, I'm voting for my pocketbook, I'm voting for my wallet, right? I have actually said to friends, well, I mean, that's good to know. That is good to know, because in the 30 years that we've been friends, I had no idea that money was the most important thing to you. I didn't know that. But I'm glad to know now, because now, I mean, I really want to know all of you. And that's something that I just didn't know about you. So I appreciate you sharing with me, because now I know who you are. And that's the most important thing in our relationships, right? Now, I saw all of your faces when I said that, or the one that are on the bar that I could see. You were like, oh, shit. Yeah, that's what I said. Glad to know that about. I didn't know. I had no idea. And what does someone say to that? Now they have to think, is that who I am? Right? I have said to people, I did not realize that the money that you were putting in your 401k or the money that's in your bank account was more important to you than whether or not a man willingly says openly that he sexual assaults women. I did not know that you were okay overlooking the character of an individual. I didn't know that. I mean, we've had lots of conversations about me having experienced sexual assault in the military. Not once did I think that was something you'd be willing to vote for someone who did those things to women. I just didn't know that. Can you help me understand why that's something that you're okay with? Because I don't get it. And I love you and I want to get it. If I say I love you and I want to get it, now we're not opposition. I'm telling you, I love you. You have value in my life, and I need to understand, because this is just not who I believed you were. But I don't sound condescending, do I? I don't sound mean. I don't sound like you're a shitty person. Sorry, I shouldn't say that word. I don't sound like you're a horrible person. I don't sound like that. I just sound like, wow, holy crap, had no idea. Right? So when we have these conversations, in everything that I heard, everything that I just said, you heard respect, you heard compassion, you heard authenticity, and you heard vulnerability. If we bring those to every conversation, we will gain, at a minimum, understanding, even if we don't gain agreement. Okay? So that is the goal. The goal is always understanding, even if you don't gain agreement. Right? Because understanding means that you are either planting, watering, or harvesting a seed. Just don't be attached to the outcome of which one of those it is. Because maybe the person before you watered, maybe you planted, and the person coming after you is going to harvest. It's okay. Right? We're all here tending the same field together, right? So I want to pause before I go into this next part, and I'm going to stop sharing for a second. To see if anybody has anything about that particular thing that you want to interject or say things to, or if you're cool holding until the end, I'm cool answering at the end. Everybody's cool, it looks like. Okay, perfect. Then I'm going to keep going. So the next thing that I always talk about is the energy that you bring to the conversation and the emotion that you leave people with. Let me tell you something, folks. It is not how you feel. Your emotion is not the thing I'm focused on at all. I am focused on the emotion that you leave the people that you're talking to with, because that's what they're going to remember the most. They might not remember every fact you give them, everything that you say, but they are going to remember how you made them feel. So you have to be mindful of the energy that you bring to every conversation, because that will directly impact the emotion that you leave them with, right? So how many times have you thought you get your little van turf and you're like, oh my God, I'm going to this neighborhood, I'm going to this community, I'm going to here, like, you know who lives over there? Or I know, did you know that last week they had like a bunch of Trump flags, and that already shifts your energy. You are responsible for the energy that you bring to every conversation. And so what I always think about is, how do I want to show up in every conversation with every person? Because I can't determine how they show up, but I can determine how I show up, right? So like I say, I love to bring humor into the conversation, because humor, like when somebody chuckles, I've seen you all chuckle when I say some things, right? When you chuckle, guess what? That means your defenses are down and you are open for exchange. Nobody's defensive when they're laughing. Nobody's mean, nobody's mad, nobody's whatever. Humor is great. So I'll give you some examples of humor. So Lisa's heard me talk about this. Mary probably has too, but we were out working down in this area of Atlanta called Old Nat. Now, Old Nat is like almost all Black people, right? And it's a part of the community that is not affluent, right? So this is not South Fulton County where all the houses are like $500,000 to $1 million and they're all Black people. Nope, this is the hood. This is Old Nat. And we're down there for Old Nat Day. And it's all kinds of people in the park, and they've got like local rappers and like the rapper called Killer Mike, who I don't like. But anyway, it's because he's not a nice man and he does things that are against his people. But anyway, so we're down there at Old Nat. It is like 90 some degrees. Do y'all know anything about Atlanta? There's a reason they call it Hot Atlanta, because 90 some degrees in Atlanta is different than 90 some degrees in other places, right? So we've got these Stacey Abrams fans. They don't care that it's Stacey's face on it. They just want a fan. And by this point, like I'm already wearing my hair slicked down, but at this point in the day, I have sweated, my t-shirt is stuck to me, my hair's matted, and I'm walking up to this Black woman to talk to her about why she needs to vote for Stacey Abrams. And as soon as she sees me coming towards her, she rolls her eyes, right? She's like, oh, and I'm like, I know. This is literally what I said. I know. I don't know her, y'all. I said, I know, girl, it is hot. I know you see the Stacey Abrams sign. You don't even want me to talk to you, but guess what? I'm hot too. I don't want to be here either, but this is too important for me to bypass. I would rather be at home in my air conditioning, but I got to have like just 2 seconds of your time. And she's like, all right, girl, what? Now, why is she giving me those 2 seconds or that 2 minutes of her time? A, I asked for it. And B, I acknowledge the elephant in the room. Nobody wants to be doing this. She don't want to hear me, and I don't want to be talking to her. Real talk, right? Last week, Kamala Harris was in Charlotte. I went to Charlotte to help do the rally. I'm in this long line of people. It is hot. We are tired. We are standing. And I've got a clipboard. You don't know what I'm asking for. I'm asking for people to phone bank. You are in line to see Kamala Harris. I'm going to need some time from you, right? And so I asked this woman in the line. I'm like, all right, y'all. And she starts looking down. You see the people that look down because they don't want you to talk to them? She's with a group of 2 other people. And I said, listen, I know y'all see me coming with this clipboard, so you know I want something from you, right? And that's okay. You don't want to give it to me, but we're going to talk about it anyway. And immediately they chuckle. Why? Because I'm acknowledging listen, you see me, I'm knocking on your door. I'm not holding the Book of Mormon, so that's not me. I'm not a Jehovah's Witness. We are here y'all know what time it is. It's election time. We're going to have a conversation. And you see how all of y'all are kind of chuckling about it, because it is real. So why am I going to pretend that it's anything else? No, I'm not. And so I said, listen, here's the thing. North Carolina is this close to turning blue. This close. We need to do everything we can possibly do to make that happen. So there are 2 ways that you can help Kamala Harris become the president of the United States and turn North Carolina blue. 1, is to knock doors. The other one is to phone bank, right? And if you want a phone bank, you can do it over Zoom from the comfort of your home, right? Just 2 hours every time. So all I want to know from you is what day and what time can you give Kamala Harris 2 hours of your time? Not me. You ain't giving me 2 hours. You are giving Kamala Harris 2 hours of your time. And here's what you can pick from. You have this day, and this day, or this day. Which one? And then I turn the clipboard around, and I had a woman go to me. She goes, one girl signed up just like that. The other girl goes, I don't want to. And I said, yeah, me either. I don't want to either. I mean, real talk. I don't want to be talking to you right now. I'm tired. My feet hurt. I'm a disabled veteran. I've had 40 surgeries. I don't want to be talking to you. And I'm quite sure that Kamala Harris doesn't want to be called all the names she's being called. I'm sure that she doesn't want her stepchildren and her husband to be attacked. I am sure that there are other things that she wants in her life than what we are experiencing. But sometimes in order to get what we want, we got to do things we don't like to do. Now, I'm mindful of the energy that I'm bringing to her. So sometimes the energy isn't always, woo, that ain't always the energy. Sometimes the energy is affirmative accountability. Sometimes the energy is, hey, let's get real about things. I don't want to either. And sometimes I'm not leaving you feeling warm and fuzzy. Sometimes I'm leaving you feel like, ooh, maybe I need to get my life together. I'm okay with that energy. I don't want to leave you feeling belittled. I don't want to leave you feeling discounted. I don't want to leave you feeling like I believe something's bad about you. I want to leave you examining your choices about how you show up in this world, right? So that is what I mean by energy and emotion, okay? The next thing is, I believe that every issue comes back to 4 pillars: healthcare, housing, education, and economic mobility. That's what I believe. I don't care what you pick, it all comes down to one of these 4 things. So what is your responsibility when you're out talking to people? Whether it is at your dinner table, the neighborhood cookout, the PTA meeting, or when you're knocking doors. You need to know what are the policies that have either recently been implemented or are being promised, and how it impacts people on a local level, right? You need to know the time frame in which these things have happened, and you need to make it tangible for them. So a great place to do this is if you go to invest.org, you can see the money that the entire state of Colorado was given through the Biden-Harris administration. I don't know if you know that or not, but you can. Another great website for people, if they don't know who their candidates are, is bluevoterguide.org. If you go to bluevoterguide.org, you can put in your address. It will pull up all of the Democratic candidates, any amendment or any issue that's on your ballot. You can print that sucker out and take it with you. Because like my mom will be like, my mom is 79. And she'll say, I don't know who's running for office in this, that, or the other, or I can't remember the name of that judge or any of those things, right? So bluevoterguide.org is a perfect one. But you want to be able to have 1 to 2 examples of proposed or past policies from each of these 4 pillars that will or has already positively impacted the community that you're speaking to or the state, right? And you want to know how fast it can or did happen and what does it mean for them and their loved ones. So don't just say the CHIPS and Science Act, because who the heck knows what that means? Who knows what the infrastructure bill really is? Who knows, right? So you've got to get in the nitty gritty a little bit and have a little arsenal for yourself. 1 to 2 of these things and make them relevant to people in their lives. So this is the choice that we have facing us. You like the pictures I chose? I do. Right? So this is the choice. Project 2025 and Agenda 47. Do you know the only time I bring up Project 2025? The only time is when I can effectively tie it to Agenda 47. If I can't tie it to it, if I can't show where in Donald Trump's agenda that it's happened, that it's also in Project 25, I don't mention it. Why? Because they believe him when he says, I don't know anything about it. And I'm not about to argue with you. But what I will do is show you that it's already happened. So one of the ways I do that is say, like in Agenda 47, did you all know that when they talk about firing federal workers, like cleaning the deep state so that they can easily hire and replace and hire and fire people at will for policymaking, Do y'all know that he did this already in 2018? May 25th of 2018, he did 3 executive orders. Those 3 executive orders were challenged in DC District Court. The DC District Court put forward an injunction and said, hey, you can't take away their collective bargaining power. Like, you can't do that. You can't remove their protections as federal workers. And then a year later, that was overturned in the appellate court, not because the DC District Court was wrong, but because they said, you don't have jurisdiction to do that. So this is the big one that you want to remember. October 21st of 2020, Donald Trump did Executive Order 13957, 13957. Guess what that executive order was? It was the creation of Schedule F. Schedule F would have been a new category of federal workers where, guess what? They had no representation. So currently those workers have to be notified when they're going to be hired. When they're going to be fired. They have the ability to respond in writing. They have the right to representation. They have the right to appeal to the Merit Service Review Board. They have all of those things. Schedule F would have taken that away. Guess what? The very next day, January 22nd, when Joe Biden got in office, guess what he did? He revoked all of those orders, all of them. And then the Government Accountability Office did an investigation into that particular thing, Schedule F, and the impact it would have had. You can find it online, or I'm happy to email it to Lisa and Mary. But they actually found that, like, the Office of Budget and Management and the Office of Personnel Management, there were different offices that were impacted. And they looked to see who had already started to move or request to move certain positions into that category. So those people could have been fired at will. And for the Office of Budget and Management, guess what? It was 415 people. It would have impacted 68% of their workforce in that one agency alone. So when I can show you that that executive order is mentioned in Project 2025 and that it would have impacted federal workers, right? And there was a thing that was already done. Now I'm showing you that Project 2025 isn't something that might happen. It's already been happening. And I can show it to you in Agenda 47 when he is dismantling the deep state, right? It's all in the same. That's the only time I bring it up. Now I can tell you this, I was on TikTok talking about this very thing. I had a guy that was a Trumper. And when I start to talk about it, he goes, wait a minute, what? Guess what? The gods aligned and this joker was a federal worker. So he was very interested in what I had to say. So I gave him all the things to write down. He went and came back and guess what? He's not voting for Trump anymore because it's relevant to him. It's real. You have to make it tangible to people if it impacts them. Things that you can do. If you know you're going to elderly communities, I would be able to show them where in Agenda 47, it talks about reducing or changing Medicare or Social Security in Project. Highlight that stuff and have a one-pager, a pamphlet of all the things of how it's going to impact them. If I'm going into elderly community, have one-pagers that have Agenda 47 outlines on them and bullet points and a comparison. What does she want to do towards this? What does he want to do towards this? Hey, I just want to leave this with you. Right? You don't always have to do that, but having that is sometimes a really handy thing. I used to create one-pagers for Stacey all the time. But let's think about border, abortion, economy, housing, healthcare, all the things. These are the things that people are talking about, right? But most people don't even know the ins and outs of all these things. Would you all agree with that? They don't know. These are just the talking points. So how do these things actually show up in the average American's life? They show up like this. This is what you're really talking about, people. You're really talking about people's religion. You're talking about their fears. When you're talking about border, you are talking about fears. And you're talking about fear as it relates to economic mobility. That's what you're talking about. You're talking about fear as it relates to their identity. That's what you're talking about. When you're talking about abortion, you're talking about values. You're talking about religion. And you're talking about identity, right? So you gotta, this is the personal piece of it. This is the policy. This is the personal piece. So when we are having conversations with people, this is how we have to be talking to them and be cognizant that this is what we're really dealing with. So when you listen to what they're saying, be listening for their concerns about their identity. Sometimes you hear people talking about the border and the first thing you go to, oh, you're racist. Maybe they're not. Maybe they might have some unconscious, subconscious bias, but hell, don't we all? And maybe they're just scared because fear is how you motivate people. And maybe they don't really understand what's happening at the border and what's not really happening at the border. Right? Now, I had 2 Black guys on with me the other night talking about border, and they brought up Venezuela, which I love. And they brought up Aurora, Colorado. And now keep in mind, I can say something to them that you can't. Here's what I said from one brown woman to another brown man, right? I said, okay, listen, before I just talk about anything else, let me just ask y'all a question. Do you really think that there's a group of brown men armed with assault weapons that have taken over an entire apartment building, and they asked, and this is the way I said it, excuse my language, but you got to flex into who they are, right? I'm talking to them the way they talk. And I said, do you really think this is the thing? And they asked, ain't in jail? Do you really think that in the United States of America, we are just letting a group of armed Black men, brown men, take over an entire apartment community and they're not in jail yet? And where does this happen in America, right? Because I'm talking to brown men. They know this is not a thing. And as soon as I said it to them like that, the guy chuckled, he goes, nah, that ain't happening. I said, right. So I don't even have to talk to you about immigration or the border because you know good and well, they not letting people that look like you and me walk around with AR-15s and take over a whole daggone apartment, right? See? And you're like, oh, but I can say that to them because I know who they are. They already told me where they live. They already told me their economic situation. I can tell by their talk, by their language, right? So I'm going to meet them where they are and have this conversation. And you can do the same things in your neighborhoods. Because listen, rural white people know that's not happening. Yeah, they do. Everybody knows this is not a thing. If you break it down and get the real talk. And let's just say real talk, right? And then somebody else, well, what about the money they get? Okay, so I'm going to ask you again, when in the history of this country do we bring brown people over and say, here's 20 grand? When does the United States of America give anybody $20,000 and be like, here you go? Oh, without strings. Really? We don't do that. The only people that happens for is rich people. We don't get that. I don't care if you black, brown, blue, purple. If you are not in a certain category of people, if you don't have the right connections, nobody's giving you $20,000 for free. Are you kidding me? In what world? When have you known the United States? We can barely get them to give you a $600 stimulus check. Are you kidding me that they're just giving out $20,000 to immigrants? Let's use common sense. And now we're overcoming fear. And I'm not even arguing about Donald Trump. Have I mentioned Trump one time in that conversation? Nope. So they have no reason to be defensive. They just hear me going, well, dang, she's right. Okay. So how do we do this? This is my favorite part. We remove their responsibility. And anytime did I shame them for what they think or what they believe? Nope. Not at all. I want to share with you. I want to share things with you about, kind of what's going on. I'm not blaming them. And then I'm going to name the issue. I'm going to provide examples like I just did. I'm going to state what's at stake. I'm going to share my desire for a resolution. I'm going to ask for their participation. So what do you think about that? Do you think that's really happening? And I always challenge them. I'll say, who do you think benefits from sharing this type of thing? Who benefits from this kind of thinking? Is it you and me? Who does it help to spread these kinds of things? And then I gain their commitment. Listen, I'm not going to ask you to say right now, oh, you love Kamala Harris. I'm not asking that. You might not even like her. That's okay. I'm actually okay if you have to hold your nose and take a doggy bag when you go to vote in the booth, like in case you vomit. I'm okay with that. But here's what I'm going to ask you to do, right? Is can we have a real conversation about what's at stake? In this election, there's really things at stake. And then I ask them to participate in that with me. And then I gain their commitment. At the very least, will you do me a favor? If I have a one-pager, will you look over these things for me before you go vote? And can you just really challenge? Don't think about like, oh, I've always voted Republican, or, oh, I always this, or can you just review these things and ask yourself, do you want to make sure Mama can buy her medication and not have to go back to work sitting in a chair as the greeter at Walmart? Do we want to make sure that Mama doesn't have to do that? Because I do, right? Do you want to make sure that we can continue to get OBGYNs? Because guess what? They do more than just deliver babies. OBGYNs take care of people like me that had cervical cancer, and they take care of people with, endometriosis and uterine cancer and ovarian cancer and all the other things that we go through. And guess what? They take care of the women that want to have babies too, but they won't stay in states where they can't do all of those things without fear, right? In rural places, we drive 30 minutes further for OBGYN care than the regular people. I want us to make sure that we keep access to choices for you and for me, right? So it's those types of things. So when I gain their agreement, I at least want them to, if they won't gain agreement to vote early, to do all those things, I want them to gain agreement to at least look over the things that I'm talking to them about and sincerely determine how they want to show up for this country. How do you want to show up? Because there are things that I love about America and there are things that I do not like. And guess what? It's my responsibility to help fix them. Just like yours, right? And the last thing I'm going to leave you with before we go to practice is what's an objection and what's the best time to overcome it. So this part, and then we have a communication hack real quick. So what's an objection? An objection is a request for more information. You're going to be like, no, that's not what it is. Yeah, it is. If somebody objects, it's because they don't have enough information to get on board. So that's all it is. Don't be scared of an objection. And when's the best time to overcome it? Before it comes up. So the first thing that I will talk to people about, like when they talk about Kamala Harris, if I'm talking to Black people, the first place I go is, listen, I know that y'all have heard she's locked up Black men and that she withheld evidence. I know all the things. So let me just go ahead and address. So here's what happened with Jamal Truelove. Here's what happened with such and such and such and such. And then I just know I get over the objection automatically. Because I'm not going to let you bring it up on me later, right? I want to address the thing in the room before it happens, right? And so that is something that you want to do. Oh, I was reading. Okay. So this is what you want to think about. So when you start to go and knock doors, I want you to think about what are the objections you are most likely to hear from people, and then develop a way to overcome them and address them when you first get started. And I do that even with a conversation, right? The first objection I'm going to get is, I don't have time to have this conversation, right? So listen, knock, 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 answer the door. Hey, I'm Dani. I'm out canvassing, because we have an upcoming election. And I know that you are busy and you've got a lot of things to do. So I just want 2 minutes of your time. You can't open your mouth after that and tell me you're busy, right? I had a woman tell me she couldn't phone bank because she works a lot. And I said, you don't work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. She said, oh, I work a lot. I said, do you want me to know how that's not true? Do you want me to tell you how I know that you have time to phone bank? She said, how's that? I said, because you are standing in this long ass line to see Kamala Harris and you've been here all day. That's how I know you have 2 hours to phone bank. And she fell out laughing. And her friend looked at her and she was like, well, what's she going to say? You out here for 4 hours waiting to get in the door. Girl, we could have done phone bank. We could have done 2 phone banks by now. So it's just being real with people and talking to people in the way that they would talk to you, right? And overcome the objections. I know nobody wants to call people you don't know. I get it. Nobody wants to be knocked on the door and have a conversation because you all are sick of politics. I get it. Me too. I wish that our political landscape was in such a great place that this wasn't necessary. I wish that politics wasn't so confusing that the average person could have time in their day to keep up with what's happening in their local communities and in their local elections and their state elections. I wish that were true. Unfortunately, what many politicians know on both sides of the fence is that if they can keep people living paycheck to paycheck, they can keep them underinformed, misinformed, or disinformed, then they can get away with anything. And all I'm asking you to help me do is get us on a place where maybe that's not the reality that we live in. And then the last thing that I keep telling Republicans is, listen, if you love the Republican Party, here's the irony. In order for you to save the Republican Party, you're going to have to vote Democrat this year, because somebody has taken your beloved party from you and they have run it into the ground. It is no longer the party of conservative, practical. It's not, that's not what it is anymore. It's a party of extremism. And if you want your party back, you're going to have to vote Democrat. And then let them talk about that, right? So communication hack, very quickly. It's about understanding how people process information. And I'm give you a couple of quick examples. People like me, I'm a producer. We tend to talk fast and we are task driven. So with people like that, it's long story short, I'm going to get straight to the point, quickly, task driven. So you want to get to the point by using 2 to 3 hyper local issues and their potential solutions, and then have a checklist for them, right? So if my candidate could do 1, 2, 3, are you on board? Like those producers, like a checklist, they want to know what they need to do to make things happen. And they want you to be quick about it, for goodness sake, don't waste their time. And imagine this, these are the people that are very, they are idea driven people. And I love them. The way that you identify these people is where pretend you've been in a meeting for like, I don't know, way longer than you want to be. And the person leading the meeting goes, does anybody have any questions before we go? These are the people that always raise their hand and you're like, dear God, could you shut up? That's the Imaginists, because they are idea-driven people. And they're always thinking about the what if, the big picture, the this, the that. So when you are talking to those people, you want to be painting a picture for them. You want to be saying, can you imagine if we had a political world where people weren't name calling and people weren't so busy clapping back on X, that we were actually focused on getting policy done? Because policy frames your reality. Can you imagine a world where we weren't, always talking about genders and race and this and that? Can you imagine a world where we were just talking about people? Picture what it would be like, A, B, C, D, X, Y, Z, right? So can you imagine, can you envision, what would it paint a picture for these people? Teamists, I use some of this language because you don't always know when you first meet someone what they fall into. So you want to use words like we, us, together, share, because that indicates that we are in this thing together and it's a relationship builder. Teamist is someone that you could be out shopping with them and they'll go, oh, I bet so-and-so would love this and so-and-so would like that. And Jenny did this the other day and Susie did that the other day and Mark did this. So they are relationship driven. They filter things through their relationships with people, right? And then analysts, they do want data, but they only want data so they can figure out how. So people that are analytical, they want the who, what, where, and when so that they can figure out how. So you want to give, so in your writing, in your social media posts, in your flyers that you're putting out, in your radio ads, in your conversations with people, make sure that you are weaving in, not like Donald does, dear God, please don't weave like Donald, but you are weaving in a couple of steps, right? Because that will appeal to producers and analysts, right? A few images, and then the we, us together. If you can do that and do a 1, 2, 3 that tells people how at the same time, that means you're covering producers and analysts. Use we, us together, share at some point in that, and then paint a picture of what that would mean for them, then you're going to win. And that is it. It's just time for questions. I know that was quick, but you're going to get the recording. Try to get it all in.
Dani, that was amazing. Mary, if you don't mind, I did see one quick question in here in the chat that I thought would be really good when you were talking about difficult conversations.
Mm-hmm.
Questions from Frank Lillian. It says a lot of Dems, especially young people, have strong feelings about Gaza and blame Biden and by extension Harris for the suffering there. How do you speak with them?
Oh, this is how I ended up on TikTok, by the way. My oldest daughter is 30. My youngest daughter is about to be 27, and they know what I do. And so I went to visit Brianna, my oldest, in Brooklyn, and 2 of her roommates are Black women. One of them is queer. The other one is not. So you would think liberal, New York, Brooklyn, Black, gay. And they were like, nah, I just can't do it with Biden. And I was like, what? what do you mean you just can't do it, right? And they started talking about Gaza. And I said, okay, so can I have a big girl conversation with you? Because this is going to be rough and you might not like parts of it, but that's what life is. Okay. So war sucks. I don't care who's in it. And innocent people die every time, in all ways, in all places. Right. And nobody wants that. I don't care who they are. You cannot convince me that Joe Biden or Kamala Harris is sitting in the White House going, yay, I love that Palestinians are dying and that we can't get Israel on board. That's just horseshit. It's not a thing that happens. Right. But here's the choice that we have. Okay. Just so we're clear about this. We are on a plane together. This plane that we're on is called the United States of America. And over the last several years, we have taken some big hits, right? We've taken some big hits. We've not just had turbulence, folks. January 6th took out one of our engines, right? The oxygen masks on our plane have dropped, in case you don't know, right? When you have people in the Capitol carrying Confederate flags, the oxygen masks have dropped in this country. Now you have two choices. You can either put on your oxygen mask, which in this case is voting, right? And keep us, and so that we can safely land this plane, right? Or you can look out your window, see what's happening in Palestine and Gaza, and say, oh, I'm not going to save us until we save them, and let us crash and burn. That's entirely up to you, but those are the choices. Like it or not, I'm military, right? I'm a veteran. I get that this sucks, right? But the only hope we have in helping Palestine is to vote Kamala Harris in office and land our plane safely. We can't let our own plane crash and burn because we want to save someone else. We can't. And don't get me wrong, we want to save someone else. Really, we do. But we don't dictate what other countries do. And I can tell you this, Donald Trump says he's going to tell Israel, finish it. So I get it. You're upset. Me too. But we are spoiled in this country. We think that we have to like our choices. You don't. You don't. I hate to tell you, but you don't. These are the choices. Suck it up. I love you, young people. You want a different candidate? Great. Run for office. But right now, you got to deal with what we have. You want a three-party system? Great. You're not going to get one before November 5th. So vote. Right? You want ranked choice? I don't care what you want. You want something different? Great. But you're not going to get it before November 5th. And if you want Palestine to get any humanitarian help at all, it's going to come from Kamala Harris. That's it. So no, we're not going to be able to deliver them from Israel. And yes, it sucks what's happened since then. I get it. Just today, we got another news alert. I don't know if y'all saw it, but they hit some schools or some sort. Israel did. And I thought to myself, here we go again, right? And if you want my honest opinion, you're going to see more of that as we lead up to November 5th to try to cause division within our party. We are. But we have to talk to young people lovingly and honestly. Right? I get it. I think it sucks too. Go ahead, Mary.
Thank you, Dani. I just want to talk about the fact that some of us live in rural communities where that are largely Republican. Montezuma County is one, and where we are mostly canvassing lean GOP with low party scores, and some solid GOP. And so part of our goal when we do that is I don't talk. I've already knocked over 2,000 doors. So
I know. She's the not queen.
My goal is 5,000 this cycle. But my approach is to work on our down ballot candidates, especially down to the county level. It's so important, or the judicial district level, for example. And so when I am talking to voters at the door, most of whom are lean GOP or GOP, I don't talk about the top of the ticket. And because some of them will vote for Kamala and some of them won't. But but many of them will vote for our down ballot candidates.
Yep.
Especially if I can present the really practical differences that those candidates will make as in their lives personally, as opposed to an opponent. And so I just want to reassure other people out there in rural counties that if if you aren't talking about the top of the ticket, it's okay.
100%.
Montezuma County is not going to vote for Kamala in a high percentage, but we will be able to get votes, Republican votes for our down ballot candidates in House, congressional districts, et cetera. So,
and that's why you have to know where you are and who
right.
your audience is, right?
Right.
And that doesn't frighten me as much because Colorado had a good national Democratic issue. I think that you'll know who you're knocking doors and what's appropriate. And so I would only talk national if they bring it up, if that's the area that you're in. But we need down the ballot as much as we need everything else, right? So yeah, agreed. Yep.
Add that Colorado has the ability to have the House for Vice President Harris, right?
Yeah.
What a miserable first couple of years that will be if the House and the Senate are controlled by basically Donald Trump, right? Because they do his bidding. Yeah, Greg's got his face covered. Dani, did you want to do any of the like practice scenario role playing at all?
I do. I think Susan has a question, and then if anybody wants to role play with me, I'm happy to do that.
I was just, excuse me, sorry, quick. I was just thinking there's another thing here in Colorado when you're doing your door knocking or calling or whatever, a good neutral topic to start up with saying, how are you? Are you okay? Are you registered to vote? Are you okay with the process of the mail-in ballot or dropping it off to a ballot box? Do you have any questions about that? Because there's a lot of people who, surprisingly, I'm an election judge. And you should see some of this stuff.
Yep, I get it.
And so sometimes, see, that's very neutral. You're not asking party either way, and you can start the conversation out because they say, well, yeah, how do I know that it's actually going to get delivered? Then you can say, oh, you don't mail it if it's a week till the election. You got to go use the drop box. But it's okay here in our county. They have it under surveillance 24/7 with a camera. Nothing will happen to your ballot once you drop it in that box. It's okay.
So for me, with that, that's beautiful. Because one of the things that I used to use on Stacey's campaign, she had this webpage called oh my gosh, how can I help? Right. And in that webpage, there was a little form fill. Think of like a Google form that was embedded in the page. You could go to her page, you could put in your info, select your county, and then there was a list of issues down below. So if you needed help with health insurance, if you needed help with housing, if you were about to be evicted, if you needed help with whatever, you could check that box. But when the drop box was down, you could select your county, and then literally someone from constituent services would call you and they would give you the agencies and organizations in your county that help with those issues, right? So that was a really easy in for me because I would be talking to people and I'd say, hey, do you know anybody who's having trouble paying their rent? They'd be, yeah, great. Has anybody told you about our constituent services team? And then I would get them to fill out this form. And it was a way to show them that Stacey was helping. Because remember, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. So she cares about you. She's put together this list for you. So it's a great way. It's a non-threatening way to enter that conversation. So for you, Susan, I would have a little one-pager about mail-in ballots. And I would include and I would have benefit. It's monitored 24/7. There's cameras on it. So your ballot is safe. So when you're having that conversation, it's something great to leave with them. And they remember that you did that. Now I'm going to ask you a personal question. Don't think I'm weird. So is your background your actual space that you're in, or is that a screen behind you?
That is my actual space.
So let me tell you what that tells me about you. You are an imaginist. I can look at your workspace and tell you that you are an imaginist driven person. So workspaces are this great way to be able to tell how people are, right? So just right now when I'm looking and I can see people's backgrounds, I would say 100% that Rob is an analyst driven individual. And I can tell by his environment. I can tell that Susan is an idea driven person. I can tell by her background and her workspace. This is I do trainings on these things, right? And it's really cool because you can tell sometimes by the way people eat, by the way they work, by their work desk, by different things. how they are. So yeah, that's a great way to end the conversation. So if any of you guys have the same thing, that's a great way to get to enter the conversation because it's non-threatening and you're telling them something that helps them no matter who they vote for. So now they know you care.
Or they might have family who's got questions.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep. Good thing.
So, does anyone have like something they'd like to talk through, role play kind of with Dani, or do you have more questions for her? Raise your hand.
Yep. If you have an objection that you encounter all the time that you want to role play through, if you're meeting a certain type of resistance when you go to knock doors or have conversations and you want to role play through that, I'm happy to do any of that practice. Or if you just have more questions, I'm good with that. Don't get all quiet on me.
I know. Well, while people are thinking about it, Dani, you talked about this in one of, maybe it was the last one I went to. I don't know. They kind of run together, but oh, here we've got someone, and then I'll come back to that.
Yep.
Josh says, "Hi, Dani. Thank you for an outstanding presentation. My question is about an issue that affects everyone and yet is barely on the radar this election. This is climate change. Even at the DNC, not a lot of time is devoted to it. Earlier this week, there was a great article on the Hill about the communication failures about the issue. We all know the reasons why. Okay, here, I'm going to get to the question. My question is, how you would find leverage with this topic this season, make it real for people while getting across the idea that this topic shouldn't, I'm not
Don't know
sure.
the rest.
Yeah,
George, where you at, George?
here we go. He's right here. George, you can unmute and talk.
Hi,
Hey, George.
and here we go.
Shouldn't be
Hey.
dividing, but rather dividing, but unifying people. Got it.
Yeah,
In Montezuma County. Okay. So when you have people that are kind of engaging with you about climate change, what's usually coming up with it? How is this conversation happening?
well, what I find interesting is that even with a lot of progressives, people don't really want to talk about it for very long.
Mhm.
And they don't really want to talk about their role at all. They might want to talk about it at the policy level, but that's interesting to me in itself. And then we talk about, say, the vast middle on the issue where people have, they obviously have a sense of increasing disaster, weather-related disasters and so forth, and may or may not believe in, anthropogenic, human-caused climate change. But I see a variety of reasons that people avoid the issue, and not just, we could get into not just cognitive ones, but also emotional ones. And
Yeah.
so I find that one of the most challenging things in general, really, is where to find those points of leverage. And even this year, at the DNC, the issue was kind of soft pedaled. There was a segment devoted to it one of the evenings, I can't remember which, but so how to work that in with the idea of building support for the future. And the fact that it is the greatest threat to everybody.
So I want you all to notice the way that George is speaking. George is also an Imaginist, and he's an Imaginist teamist if I were betting money on it. He hasn't had I can tell by the way he's speaking. Do you hear how many questions he's asked me about this same issue? Right? How do we do this? And where do we do this? And so he's asked me all the different ways that this could tie in. So just start paying attention to speeches, speech patterns and the way that people do it. So that you can start knowing how you want to talk to them. Okay, so this is my thing. The way that I answer that is this. If people aren't bringing it up in conversations, or they're not wanting to talk about it, I wouldn't push. And the reason I wouldn't push about that is, and I think, and this is just my own guess as to why a lot of time isn't being talked about it for this upcoming election, is because many Republicans don't really ascribe to the notion of it, or they worry about the impact on their dollars, right? Because of it. And so I think the reason why it's not being talked about a lot right now is because we need those people to get on board with this election. And it's one of the areas where the party has been willing to be a little quieter so that we can meet the immediate need, right? So when you say it's the greatest threat, I say another Trump election is the greatest threat to all of us, right? And I think the greatest like short to long-term threat would be climate change, right? So I think that even though it might be something that's important to us and that we know has to be addressed, so the way that might be a between cycle way to have conversations and build people and win people over, if I were to pick issues. So off cycle is a great time to knock doors and canvas talking about issues, and then be able to build that into candidates during the election cycle, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does make sense. And I completely agree with you. And my own efforts this fall are focused on, what you're talking about as the immediate threat. My concern in general, though, is to play devil's advocate, is that climate change continues to get put off for a bunch of reasons, not just in the US, but all over the world, which is why we hear, the UN Secretary General, pleading, crying, screaming about it. And so we have very little time. So there's where I see the tension, even though practically speaking, strategically speaking, at this moment, I completely agree with you. But it's like, the last thing I'll say, I come back to Al Gore's 2006 film, An Inconvenient Truth. At that time, and I liked the film, but at that time I thought the title was kind of meh, It was like, oh, An Inconvenient Truth. The longer sit with the issue and talk to a variety of people about it and write a bit about it and so forth, I think the title was right on. It is actually, it's inconvenient. It's inconvenient to, industries. It's inconvenient to individuals and so forth. But I'll stop there because I don't want to take too much time. Thank you.
No, I agree with you 100%. And so I would be wanting, and so I wouldn't talk to people about climate change. It's one of those triggering words that as soon as you say it, people go, right?
Right.
So the way that I would talk about it in your local area is, where have you seen issues happen to natural spaces and resources in Colorado that are because of climate change? And you could start to have conversations around that. It's not, I don't want to know what you think about climate change. It's, hey, remember when we used to have this ABCD great place that we used to be able to do whatever at, and then make it local and make it real for them. And you can start as early as November 6th. That's what I would say. I know, Mary, and then Russell.
I just wanted to say that yesterday I knocked on the door of a man who had he had a fairly large garden, and there was part of it that was very nice and part of it that was obviously in serious decay. And he talked to me. I complimented him on his garden. That's how I start my conversations, and with something that's more casual. He was very interested in talking. He was not a Democrat. And we started talking about his water bill and how much his water bill went up. And it went up over, I think, $180 in 1 month. And he had protested it. And he talked about how sad he was that he had lost so much of his garden, because we have had very unusual long summer. We're still having summertime weather here in Southwest Colorado. And so I didn't talk about climate change, but we did talk about the effect of this longer summer and how hard it was to grow things. I mean, if you couldn't afford to pay water for your vegetables and your flowers. And it just kind of building on what George said, I want to go back to that voter. That's always in my mind. How will that voter see me when I knock on their door in 2 years or a year for municipal or town board elections or city council or county commissioner? And I want to go back to that voter and in the off year and talk about building on his water problem, talk about, climate change, but not use those terms. So,
yep, that's it. Perfect. Russell.
Well, that's pretty much where I was going to go. It seems like a lot of the people that we end up talking to at the doors, they have well, let's say a different perspective. And I need a good set of intro. How do I get into these people's discussion with these people? Since I don't know anything about them, and Mary, that was obviously a good one with their garden. But so many people, I'll end up talking to them. I've had a couple of people where I've told them, here are all our candidates, and I'll explain the candidates. And then the last thing I'll bring out is, in our case, Project 2025, and they'll say, oh, I'm voting for Trump.
Yeah. So again, I don't ever bring that stuff up, and I'm on social media. That's one of the ways that I know where my areas of influence, right? So both on Facebook and TikTok, I have about 30,000 followers each. And so I know that those are places where I can put out information. So I don't bring up Project 2025 unless I can specifically lead with Trump's Agenda 47 and then tie it to Project 2025. But sometimes it's not even necessary, because somebody that's that ingrained into Trump, as soon as you say Project 2025, their initial response is to defend him, which means I'm voting for him no matter what you say. But when you are out canvassing and you're knocking on doors, always pay attention to the people, to everything that's going on around them. So if you're in a room and you knock on a door and somebody is kind of distracted, or you see a little one run in the background with a diaper on, oh, I want to talk to them about the earned, I want to talk to them about the family child tax credit. I want to talk about the newborn tax credit. I want to talk about the cost of childcare. Those are things that I want to talk about, because I'm going to be mindful of what's going on. Remember, it's not about what you want to talk about. It's what's going on in their lives and what's going to be impacted by the vote that they cast. So what's going on? Are they somebody that you see an elderly person in the background, right? Then I want to talk to those people about caretaking and Social Security and Medicare and all of those things. So be mindful of the communities where you're in and the doors that you're knocking, what's happening around those people's lives, even if you're phone banking. If you are phone banking, this is me all day. If I hear a kid in the background phone banking and they're talking or a baby's crying, I'm like, oh, how cute. How old is that little one in the background? My grandbabies are A, B, C, D, X, Y, Z. I can remember when Dominic was born and daycare was $1,100 a month. I can't imagine what you're paying right now. And guess what? She's going to tell me if she's paying it, if she can't afford to pay it, if it's keeping her from working, like what's happening. And now I'm into a conversation about that person, that person's life, and what matters to them. And now they know that I care, because I didn't ignore the fact that they've got a baby in the background because I want to get through my script. No, I want to talk about you and your life. And now I know how to weave you into where we want to go. And that's the key in these conversations, is paying attention to the people that you're talking to, what's happening in their background and their environment. And that way you can meet them where they are to talk. So it's great to have an outline of where you want to go. It's great to have 2 to 3 things for each of the issues, but you got to be able to flex into that person's life and then bring it and tie their life into the issue. That's the key. You got to make it real for them. If it is just some abstract policy that is never going to benefit them, you're losing. You've got to make it, this is how this thing is going to be so good for you. Like, I'm honest with people. Listen, it's not like Kamala Harris is going to twinkle her nose like an episode of Bewitched and everything is great. Are you kidding me? Absolutely not. You know how you can help? Give her a good Congress. Like, you can do that, right? But if we're not honest with people like that, we don't win. Go ahead, Russell. Sorry.
It sounds like then it would be advantageous for us to put together a list of these issues and talking points for healthcare, for economic mobility, et cetera, for each of our canvassers, so that they have something they could bring to the table and not necessarily have to look it up themselves.
Absolutely.
Right. Thanks.
Yep. And I would do it even if you have some on local issues. So like, I'm going to be talking to my friends in Tennessee. Tennessee just banned Beloved by Toni Morrison. They just banned 4 or 5 other books. And so I'm going to be talking to people. Yeah, Tennessee is one of the worst. That's where I'm from. But yeah, so if you can give people, make it easy for your people talking, right? I would do it in a Google Doc, so them jokers had it on their phones via a link. And then I'd also have like a little paper thing for the people where they're going, where they can leave it with folks, right? So what are the things that are going on locally? young people, if you got young people canvassing, they love anything electronic. Boy, put that together in a little Google Doc, give them a link, and whoop, they're good to go, right? If I'm going with older people, please print that thing out, right? It's just like the reality of it all, right? And so, like, even with my mom, I did Blue Voter Guide for my mom and printed out her voters for her so she could take it to go vote. Because she's like, I don't know, I don't want to do all that. It's like she gets real, rah. But it's not because she hates technology. It's because doing technology makes her feel like she's dumb because she doesn't know what she's doing. And she's not. She's a very brilliant, intelligent woman, right? But when we have to do things that we don't know how to do, sometimes it makes us feel less than, or it's a reminder that the world has continued to advance while I've gotten older. And so keep that in mind when you're talking to people. I had a guy, I'm going to get to you in just a second, Lene. I had a gentleman who was talking to me and he was super upset about fracking. And I mean, you should have heard him. He was mad. And then I was listening, and guess what? Here's the thing. His family has been in fracking in his area for he's like third or fourth generation, and he employs a lot of the people in his county. So he's concerned about his ability to have livelihood for other people. It's not just his money in his pocket, right? So he's concerned about this. And it's a particular type of fracking because all fracking is not the same. So I took a moment in that conversation to say, okay, I said, I hear you. I hear you that you are concerned not only about your livelihood, but about your responsibility to provide income for the people in your community. I get it now. I understand it. And here's what I will offer to you is none of that is fair. And it is scary. I got that for you. And sometimes the world changes around us and we've got to figure out how do we evolve with it. And I said, I'm going to sound really weird when I say this, but did you ever watch the movie Hidden Figures? Right. And he's like, yeah, I did. And I said, do you remember when the Black women were all down there? They called them the computers and they were doing all the math. And the woman comes down and she says, hey, guys, we're going to be replacing you with this big IBM computer. Do you remember that? And the lead Black woman goes upstairs and she figures out how to run the damn machine when nobody else could figure it out. Right. And then she taught it to all of her girls so that they could figure it out. Said, what you've got to do is figure out within your industry, how do you stay up to date? How do you stay relevant in the direction that your industry is going? How do you stay relevant? What are the alternatives? What's the competition for the type of fracking you do? What do you need to learn to get into that type of position? How can you evolve what you do currently that's a win and keeps your position, keeps your company, and keeps your community thriving in the midst of change? Because change is coming whether we like it or not. Right? And so what did he hear? He heard that I respected his position. I had compassion for his position, right? I was being authentic about it, even if it wasn't something he wanted to hear, right? And I was being vulnerable. So he could hear me and he was like, okay, good. He was like, that's good advice. And I said, yeah, no, it's not great, but here's where we are. So sometimes you have to do that. But yeah, is it Lene? How do you say your name?
It is Lene. Exactly.
Don't
Thank
me.
you.
You're welcome.
So I live in a small town called Wellington. It's been growing quickly. But I was canvassing by myself in this very Republican town, much more so even than now, for Obama. And I'm 5'3", and I was doing it alone. And I was wearing my Proud to be a Democrat t-shirt and carrying all my literature. And I knocked on this door, and this tall gentleman with a high and tight haircut answered the door, and he said, well, you know, I used to be in the military, so I'm voting for John McCain. And I said, really? What branch were you in? And he had Navy. Well, that's the second best branch. And I said, my father was in the Air Force for 30 years. Thank you for your service. How long were you in? 4 years. So we started talking about him. And then I said, okay, and what did you retire as? And he told me, and I said, wow, that's really terrific. So do you know what John McCain recently voted against that was good for veterans? And then we had a real conversation.
Yep.
And he suggested I run for office, and I said, oh, hell no.
Yeah, I get that all
so
the time.
we got in the humor, we got in the connection, and it was something that not everyone can do. but at least I had something that I could relate to someone with. And I
Yep.
don't know if I made him a voter for Obama, but I did draw a contrast between McCain and Obama and what Obama was wanting to do.
And that's the thing. So when we talk about knowing the policies and what did or didn't happen, I want to know. So in Ohio, I would be telling everybody, JD Vance skipped the child tax credit vote, right? All of those. I put in the chat jokingly, don't be like Lene, LOL, buddy system, please. But I will tell you this, the political climate today is different than in 2008, right? It has become more aggressive and more volatile. And so that's why I really do stress the buddy system when you're out knocking doors. Especially in places that, you know, may be kind of contingent. So please buddy system up if in order to make sure that you're safe. But that's a perfect thing to do. So when I know that a candidate has specifically voted against something that is for the people. So where I'm from, Gloria Johnson is running against Marsha Blackburn, who I can't stomach her for a multitude of reasons, right? But in Northeast Tennessee, which is 85% Republican, a lot of those people follow me and listen to me because I led a healthcare protest for their region, right? Well, guess what? When we took those 30,000 local signatures to Congress, guess whose door I knocked on and met with? Marsha Blackburn. Guess what I keep telling everybody who will listen to me? Don't you dare vote for Marsha Blackburn because she refused to help you with your medical monopoly. The people that took your hospitals from 3 and 4 stars to 1 and 2 stars, she refused to help you with. Guess what? I met with Gloria Johnson. She's the one who carried through a piece of legislation to try to help us. She's the one who, and I have talked about what she can do on a federal level to stop them. So, right. And so again, I'm tying in what these people are doing and what they're not doing to help or not help the constituents. Mary. Thanks. Oh, you're on mute, doll. Oh.
You think I know better by now. Great job. I just want to remind everybody that we need to wrap up. So maybe we'll take one more question if somebody has a question, and then we will wrap up so people can go out and knock doors, which I'm going to do today.
Yay.
Does anybody have any final questions?
Quick question. Since I see, I have several of my CD4 friends and Larimer County friends and Morgan County friends. Can we talk about how do we talk to folks in rural CD4, right? So, and we're talking Eastern Plains rural, right? So Lauren Bober doesn't know anything about Eastern Plains rural. She knows about mountain rural. But how do we talk to folks out there and help them see that Trisha is, you know, she's from Colorado, right? But she moved away to work and now she came back home. How do we help them see that they can still have their values and not vote for Lauren Boebert?
Yeah, that's a big one. And so when you talk about their values, are you specifically, because a lot of times when we talk about that, we end up talking about AB, abortion and things like that, right?
That's a big one, right? Like,
yeah.
Many times I've said to people, we don't kill babies after they're born. That is like literally not a thing, right? Like,
yeah, it's not a thing.
And no woman goes to the hospital to have a baby and changes her mind. And says, I don't want to be a mom today.
Hold on. Yes. And of course, I'm answering something. Okay. So when I talk to people about AB, it depends on where I'm meeting them at. So this one is very, very effective when you know the people, right? When you actually like know them as a person, as a human being. And so I won't argue with them about when an embryo is a fetus, when a fetus is a baby, like gestation, like, oh, because most people don't know and they don't really care. It's this idea that I'm doing something, you know, to save a life. That's what they say. So it depends on where that person is. If I know for sure that I'm not going to move this voter, like if I'm very sure, like they're just not going to go anywhere, I will meet them where they are when it comes to religion. I will meet them where they are, sure as you be. And I will say, so let me just understand. The reason why you can't vote Democrat is because Democrats support pro-choice and you equate pro-choice with being pro-abortion, and you believe that abortion is murder, and God says no to murder. Is that correct? And they're going to say yes. Okay, great. So here's two different ways to go that. So do Republicans support the death penalty? I mean, murder is murder, is it not? So let's just be honest. It's not about saving a life. You are determining which lives are worth saving. And I thought the only person who could do that was Jesus. And Jesus said everybody's worth being saved. That's why he crawled upon a cross. So just asking, like, really, is that what we're talking about? Because, you know, and then the other thing I will say, depending upon who they are, is well, I just want to make sure, because I'm from the South, right? I just want to make sure that we're talking that your God is the same God that I grew up in church with, right? So let me ask you these 4 questions. So, do you believe that God is the giver of life? Does God create and give all life? What do you think they always say? Yes. And I'll say, okay, so is God all-knowing? Does he know our beginning from our end and what we're going to do in between? And they say, yes. And I'll say, okay, so is God everywhere present? And they say, absolutely. I think so too. Is God all-powerful? And they say, yes. And I say, okay, so according to what you just told me about the God you serve, at the time God gives a woman life in her belly, he knows if she's going to have an abortion. He is present when she has it done, and he does not use his power to stop it. So can you tell me why you know better than God? Because I don't. I'm not asking you to agree with abortion. I am asking you not to play God in people's lives. That's it. I'm not asking you to say, yes, go have an abortion. I am asking you not to play God in people's lives because you don't know their life. God may know that in her journey, this thing that you believe is sin is the sin that she commits that maybe has her on the path to reaching him. You don't know her whole life. God does. So I trust him to know what she needs to encounter and go through to reach her relationship with him. I don't think God needs my help. So can you share with me why you do? Right? If we're going to talk about religion, let's go all the way, hands down. Because I will do that with people, right? If they're not going to talk about religion, all I'm going to talk about is literally the impact of AB bans. It's already hard enough when we live in rural communities like I do. And I'm particularly sensitive to this subject because we only have one specialist where I'm from when it comes to babies. We have one. His name is Dr. Visconti. He is the man who saved Bella's life. He delivered my second granddaughter, who was also high risk. We don't get to recruit high-risk physicians in our regions much. And when we have AB bans, we don't get high-risk OBGYNs hardly ever. So what I want you to do is not to vote to make it harder for women to have babies and to have them healthy and to live through the process and to have those babies live, because that's the unintended consequence of voting against it. And that's real talk. OBGYNs are leaving the state. They are leaving states where this is an issue. And rural communities and inner cities suffer the most because we have the hardest time attracting specialists. So I can either talk about the impacts of abortion from a specialty medical standpoint, or I can talk religion. I'm happy to meet you where you are, but that's how I do it, Lisa.
Thank you, Dani. I appreciate it. And CD4, ironically, like the majority of our Eastern Plain counties are, OBGYN deserts, right? It takes you more than an hour for a simple doctor's appointment when you're pregnant. And I'm sorry, but I'm not trying to go into labor while an hour. The doctor.
Can I give you guys a great website? So I love this place. I love this dashboard so much. So there's an organization called Deloitte, and Deloitte they have taken March of Dimes and maternity information, and they have put it into an interactive dashboard. And I'm actually going to show you, there's 3 different categories. One is like maternity care, but the other one is access to a hospital with OB care or a birthing center. And I'm going to pull up specifically Colorado for you. And I'm going to give you the link in the chat while I share my screen, and then I know we're going to go. But this is important. I want you to have this. So this is going to go to everyone. You want this link. I want you to be careful whether you're talking about access to OBGYN care or whether you're talking about access to a hospital. This, my friends, is what the state of Colorado looks like when we're talking about access to a hospital with OB care or a birthing center. If it is dark purple, that is a desert where there's no access. So out of Colorado's 64 counties, 35 of them have no access to a hospital with OBGYN care or a birthing center. This is huge. 19 only have one hospital. 19 only have one. So if I put that together, 30% and 54%, that's 85% of Colorado has either low to no access to a hospital with OB care or a birthing center. This is the impact. I love this thing so much. So, and when you hover over it, it will tell you like the total number of births, how many are low birth rate, how many have premature birth, all of those things. Look at Weld County. And they have full access to maternity care, but only one hospital, right? And their infant mortality rate is almost 5%. Premature is 9%, low birth weight is 8%. But these are numbers that matter. And so I've started to create these little things to put on social media. Like I have one that just says, it says 85%, 84% of Ohio counties, because that's their number, have low to no access to hospitals with OB care or a birthing center. And then I just post it on social media. That is what I call, it's information that gives people passive permission to vote differently. So those little types of snippets are things that you could put out on your social media between now and November 5th that make a difference. But so just be careful when you're selecting this. This is access to maternity care. This is access to a hospital. This is the one that I use the most because this is the one that matters when rubber meets the road and it's time to give birth. But if you want me to do it for the entire United States, I'm going to scare you, but I'm just going to show you so that you can see what it looks like for all states. Look how much dark purple there is. That should scare you. Over half the country, 56%, has no access. And yet we want to make it hard for women who are giving birth. And yet we're so pro-life. No, we're not. No, we're not. So you brought it up and I wanted to give you a tool because I love this tool. It's super great.
I mean, CD4, like the Eastern Plain counties, it's scary to me how far away you are to anything, right?
Yeah.
And so it's been a big thing for me. I'm not going to have any more babies, but I have babies who
will have babies.
And I've been one of those, but I am a hop, skip, and a jump away from that. So
yeah. Like for me, my oldest daughter, I don't talk about it super publicly, but she wouldn't mind me sharing here. My oldest daughter had an ectopic pregnancy just this past spring. Do you know how grateful I was that she was in New York City? Because here was her situation. She found out, she went across the street to the emergency room when her OBGYN sent her. They did all of her blood work and ultrasound and all of that. She was admitted into the hospital, and the next morning she had surgery. On the converse side of that, my youngest daughter, whose friend lives right here, they are in a state with an AB ban. Guess what? She found out she was pregnant, that it was ectopic. On a Sunday, they gave her the shot to try to kind of get her to naturally miscarry, right, to stop it. On that Wednesday, they checked her again. Her levels, her hormonal levels had grown by 1,000 on that Wednesday. They told her to come back on Saturday so they would recheck her again. So now we're at Saturday, right? 6 days later, her numbers had increased by another 2,000. So a total of 3,000 in the week since the first shot. This hospital gave her another shot rather than schedule her for surgery, right? and then discharged her immediately. By the time she drove from the hospital to my daughter's home, she was on all fours in pain. And I said, Anaya, her fallopian tubes are getting ready to rupture. And she says, Mom, what do we do? And I said, all right. I said, are you asking me? Because she's not my child and she's none of my business. But if she's asking you to ask me what to do, she said, yes. And I said, got it. Send the kids, my daughter's kids, my grandkids, send them to your cousin across the street. I'm on my way. I picked this woman up. I took her across state lines to a different state. I took her straight to a hospital that I know. By the time they did her blood work and then they did her ultrasound, they were getting the OR prepped. They were getting the OR prepped, and the doctors were furious because one fallopian tube had expanded so much, it was literally getting ready to rupture. So she lost that one. They had to remove it too. Luckily for her, and her mother was down in Florida on vacation. And I said, no worries. So we lied. We said I was her aunt, which is fine. She was good with it. I'm the aunt. And I just told her mama, her mama FaceTimed me and I said, I've got your baby. I will do for her exactly what I would do for mine. And I did. And we advocated for her and she got all the care that she needed. And when she was done, I had Panera already delivered with some hot soup and all the things. And those flowers back there are things that she brought me. But that's the difference. That is the difference. She was in so much more pain. And guess what? In that 6 weeks, I'm about to get upset. I'm sorry. In that 6 weeks, when she first went, there was no fetal heartbeat. Guess what? By the time we got it done, there was. So she actually heard a heartbeat. And this is a woman who wants children. She was devastated. She's 28. So the trauma that she had to endure is ridiculous if they had just done right by her the first time. So anyway, I'm with you, Lisa. It's near and dear to my heart as well.
I mean, I will very briefly just say, I had my own experience and had to be flown flight for life, right? To save my life. They tried to save my son. It didn't work out. I was 20 plus weeks pregnant, but I'm grateful I live in this state. I'm just very grateful for the state of Colorado. So with that, Mary, I'm gonna let Mary kind of wrap it up and we're gonna set everyone free. Dani, you are tremendously amazing. I just personally want to say thank you. We can do this all the time. Like I would gladly spend an hour and a half with you at least once a week, right? Like
yeah. And for anybody that feels that way, I'm doing these types of trainings at ruralvote.org. Lisa's got it's every Thursday at 6:30 p.m. So
Right.
That's 4:30 here, folks. 4:30.
Yep. Right. I was just going to say, you can see Dani once a week. Thank you so much, Dani. And thank you for everybody, those of you who stayed. Many people had to leave because they had Canvas kickoffs and things, but they all said how grateful they were for you coming in the chat. So I think we're just going to say thank you very much, Dani. And you and I need to communicate about okay.
Yep. Terry's asking for the link. Lisa, can you give them the link to register for the trainings on Thursdays?
I'll send that out. A few questions that came up that I'll follow up with as well. And perhaps we can send out a whole follow-up thing. We have a recording for this.
And I'll send you the deck. I'm happy to send you the deck.
And I'll make sure I include the link for Thursdays as well.
Sweet. Perfect.
Thank you, everybody.
I appreciate you guys.
Very good.
Thank you. Go forth in Canvas.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome, guys.
Bye.
See you later.